Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the MSChamps team, I warmly welcome all participants for our September meetup. We have an exciting lineup of speakers from diverse backgrounds here today to share their knowledge with the community. During these sessions, if you have any question, you can ask them in the Q&A tab available to you, and our speakers would answer them at the end of their respective session. Without further ado, I invite Mr. Haritha Thilakarathne, PhD candidate at La Trobe University and a Microsoft MVP in Artificial Intelligence, to share his screen and conduct the first session, Transitioning Machine Learning Workloads to Azure. Mr. Haritha, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Hope you can hear me. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll start the MSChamps with a fresh start. Right, give me a second. Yep, can you guys see my screen now?
Not yet. We can see it now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, right. All right. We'll get a start and welcome all for the Microsoft Student Champs. It has been such a long time after I have done my last presentation on MSChamps, and this is really nice to be back with you guys because this is the place where I got started my career, and this is the place I got involved in community stuff. So it's great to be in Microsoft Student Champs. All right, so today what we're going to discuss is about transitioning machine learning workloads to Azure. So I guess we have done many sessions in Student Champs as well as in other meetups about machine learning and what we can do with machine learning and the basic stuff, like the basic theories inside machine learning. So that I was thinking, like everyone is talking about the basic stuff and what is there and what we can do with machine learning stuff. And like we have not explored a lot and on what we can do on Azure with machine learning. Azure is a great platform. I guess everyone in the students community is aware of cloud and Azure. So the concepts I'm going to talk here is not not so restricted for Azure. You can use these concepts in other cloud platforms too. The platforms like GCP or in Amazon also, they have similar services and you can use those services. And the next thing is this session. I'm not sure, like, can everyone just ask questions from me, or like there's a moderator that's going to answer the questions, that's going to ask the questions from me? How that's going to happen?
We have a moderator to approve the questions, but you can answer them directly.
All right. Okay.
So once there are questions, we'll publish them.
Okay, so I can see them in the meeting chat, right?
Yes, there should be a question and answer tab available to you, live event Q&A.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So I'll keep my eye on that too. So that's in my other screen. So I'll keep my eye on it too. All right, we'll get started, and a little bit of an introduction of me. You might all know me. So I'm a graduate researcher at La Trobe University, Melbourne. Attached for Australian Institute of Sport, reading for my PhD in deep learning. That's like computer vision and deep learning. Sports analytics is my research area. Working as an independent consultant in data science and machine learning for startups and some companies. I do blog in Nadi Speaks and like also serving as an MVP in AI. So that's a bit of the background. You can ask me the things that you need to know about this research interest and all, and I'll happy to answer and help you out. All right, we talked about Azure and what we can do on Azure. So in Microsoft, Azure is the main cloud platform. Before that, I want to ask, like you can get a poll or something. The moderators can get a poll or something. If someone is having a problem with language, I'm so much happy to help with Sinhalese. Pardon me, I'm not good with Tamil, But if there's any Tamil translator there, please put your questions in any language. We'll try to answer those things because language should not be a barrier in this case. So that, okay, we'll start. Microsoft Azure. Everyone is talking about this cloud platform because there's variety of services that we can use on that. And there are variety of services that we can leverage that cloud power in the area of machine learning. Starting from very basic stuff like understanding a text, you can build custom AI models, which is capable of predicting videos or building SOTA models even on Azure. So the next thing is there are many developers out there, and some are not having the background of coding, or some are not having that privilege background in doing coding. So, but like the main advantage of using this Azure or the Microsoft AI platform is we have products and services that can cater for everyone, and it's kind of like democratizing machine learning. We'll say you are a developer and you don't have that much of knowledge on coding, and you just on coding on machine learning. That means you don't have a knowledge on Python or so-called those things, but you want to do some machine learning application, or you want to build an intelligent application that do some image processing. So in Azure, you have the power to do that thing because there are many services. There's uh, more likely no code or less code environments that you can leverage the power. So we'll discuss line by line or like side by side what are these services, infrastructure, and tools are. Okay, so we'll start from this particular diagram. So this is just an overview of the services, infrastructure, and the tools that we have on Azure AI or the Microsoft AI platform. So if we talk about the services, as I said previously, most of these services are available as REST APIs. That means if you want to do some experiment on an intelligent application, you need to know how to call a REST API and how to deal with JSON, and you are good to go. You can build an intelligent application using Azure Cognitive Services. And the next thing is bot framework. I'm not going to talk a lot of bot framework because it's kind of like a different area that you can talk for an hours. The case is bot framework is a really good platform to build conversational agents. That means it has all the power of understanding the natural language as well as leveraging for different channels, different social media accounts, and give a conversational agent as a chatbot. And the next thing is the infrastructure. You know, when we're doing the machine learning experiments, you guys mostly should be in the university. You might have the problem of training like big machine learning models. You may face the problem of having, okay, we have thousands or like 10,000s of images, and we need to build a machine like a deep learning classifier. How are we going to compute this thing? We don't have a GPU. So what we're going to do? So in that case, Azure AI provide the infrastructure where you can do your computation on a GPU as well as on a FPGA, field programmable gate array, the latest thing. So it is available there. You don't need to have a big cluster or a big machine to do your computations. What you can do is you can just push your code and push your experiment for the Azure cloud, and it will handle all the computation requirements for you. And the next thing is we have like when you know in machine learning and all those stuffs, we have to have a good platform to store our data, and we have to have a good platform to manage big data repositories. So Azure provide all those things like Cosmos DB, data warehouses, you name it. Everything is there on Azure with related to data. All right, that was basically the idea on infrastructure and the tools. Tools means uh, can I get a bit of a count who's actually have done some of like machine learning experiments and those things? You can just hit something like +1 or something in the Q&A so I can see the thing there. So if you have done machine learning experiments, you might have used Jupyter notebooks or like for the data science stuff, you have used Jupyter notebooks, or else you might have used VS Code or PyCharm or something with Python, scikit-learn, you name it, TensorFlow, PyTorch, those things. You can use all those tools and technologies, the frameworks and everything inside Azure. So that's the power of like using your own tool set inside the cloud environment. All right, we'll move forward. So as I said previously, this is you might have seen this. I got this screenshot from the Microsoft Cognitive Services or the Azure Cognitive Services site. All these things are available as APIs. That means you no need to know about how these all machine learning models have been built or how these models going to work. You just need to know how to call a REST API. We'll say you want to understand an image and identify which celebrity is there in that image. You just have a computer vision API that get a JSON in, and you just put your image in for that REST API, and it will tell what kind of celebrity is there. When it comes to the language, we'll say you have a text that has been scanned from a camera, and you need to understand what are the names and entities in that particular text. You can use the text analytics API where you just put the text in and it will tell you these are the names and these are the entities. Pretty cool, right? So I have worked in some projects, some university projects, as well as some projects that has been in Imagine Cup, and even in the industry, they just use these cognitive services to do all their intelligent and amazing parts. So this would be a good option if you're going to plan your final year project to do something cool. Yeah, go for it. Cognitive services is a great platform to go forward. All right, that was about cognitive services, and this is about the Power Automate. This is a new area that came up recently, the Azure Power Apps or the Microsoft Power Apps. It is having the capability of doing machine learning inside their Power Automate pipelines or the Power Automate flows. You can read the business cards, you can extract the key entities, or you can do sentiment analysis, everything by just drag and drop and with few or less code. So these are the areas you can use if you want to build, in some cases, proto industrial application. So I'm not telling if you are a machine, it would be really hard to develop everything from scratch. So this would be a great option. Can use off the shelf. The cognitive. Sure. So the things that I'm showing right now, these logos are pretty much familiar for you guys, because if you have done any course or if you have done any online thing on machine learning or data science, you have been known these things. So you have been using Jupyter, you have been using R, you have been using PyTorch or Pandas or NumPy, anything, or scikit-learn to do your experiments. So might be you are a developer pretty much familiar with JavaScript or something like that. Visual Studio Code might be your to-go IDE. You might using RStudio to do your data science stuff. And if you move forward, you might using Docker and Kubernetes to Dockerize your machine learning experiments and do the stuff on deployment as well as model training. And you must leveraging the power of NVIDIA, CUDA, and those things to do parallel processing in deep learning. All these technologies that I have talked here can be used on Azure. All these things can be connected to Azure. So that is the power that we are going to get with Azure. Right. This is a bit of like the theoretical part I'm going to talk about. So you all know how your machine learning or the data science experiment is going to work. What happens first is you have to spend 80% of your time to prepare your data. I'm pretty sure if you get a raw data set that is having so much of outliers, so much of missing values, so much of troubles, So you might have to spend like 80% of your time preparing your data that may fit for these machine learning experiments. For that, you may use Python or R or preferred language that you have. Then after that, you have to build your machine learning model. You might using Jupyter or VS Code to do your model building. You might be using Python, scikit-learn for this. We'll say you're going to build a normal SVM classifier using scikit-learn, right? After developing your model, you have to train and test your model. This is the part where the computation power is so much vital. Then after that, you have to manage your model. We'll say you have a data set which is pretty big and you don't want to train your model on that and you want to just off it for a single or a particular set of batches. And then you need to convert, like you need to switch for the big data and do the training after that. And when it goes to the production, you need to change which pickle file I need to use. Those kind of things are more like the register and managing your models. And then after that, when you're doing the machine learning stuff, managing the dependencies and configuring the development or the training environment is the most hardest and painstaking part. So Docker and Docker engines are the to go thing, I would say, because it's pretty easy to containerize your thing and just deploy in the production environments. So Azure provide all these steps inside Azure Machine Learning Service that has been released in the general availability recently. So we'll talk about what we can do there and what are the paths that we can move forward with. Right. This one, you might be familiar with this thing. This is a screenshot I got few months back. So this is the ml.azure.com, the new interface. This is called the machine learning service or the machine learning studio. Don't confuse with the previous drag and drop interface that we had, which was called ML Studio. I have a feeling that is going to depreciate mostly, so that they have replaced this ML Studio and they have bought that the capabilities that we had on that drag and drop interface into this something called Designer. Right. You might have wondered like how we can start with this thing. It's pretty easy. You have to just go for your Azure portal. I'm not sure whether all the students are having their student Azure accounts. So what you have to do is you just go for your Azure account, just search Azure Machine Learning Service, and this will pop out. There are two price plans. One is the paid plan, which is the enterprise, and there's another one called standard, which is not paid, which is free. But the pain is if you're using the free version, this automated ML and the designer is not there in the free version. All other facilities are there in the free version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through one by one of the services that we have here and tell you what you can do on those services. Not going to go deep. If you have any problem with those things, you can just ask the questions. And the question is for the moderator is, are we having any questions?
No, none yet.
Oh, great. Yes. As I said previously, what we're going to do is we're going to move one by one and see what other things we can do part by part. In the first part, we have the notebooks, automated ML, and the designer. So if you're familiar with the Jupyter notebooks and Jupyter environment, this is the same thing we have brought into Azure. We'll say you want to do some data science, data cleansing and data wrangling and some visualization using matplotlib or pandas or something like that. So notebooks would be the perfect environment for you. The advantage of using notebooks other than using notebooks on Azure, other than using on your local machine, is because you don't need to configure all your deployment environments. We'll say you want to do a GPU based computing. I know the pain of configuring all the CUDA environments, configuring the GPU and all those things. No need to do those things. You just have to click notebooks and create a new notebook and go forward with that. And the next thing is automated ML. This is a pretty cool feature, though that is not available in the free stuff. This is a feature that if you're not having extensive data science knowledge, you can build experiments or you can build machine learning models for classification, regression, as well as for time series forecasting just by few clicks. What automated ML is doing, as well as mentioned in the name, what they do is they build this machine learning pipeline automatically. That means it's identifying which algorithm will suit for this particular data set by in an automatic way. So that is pretty cool, but I'm not recommending this for many experiments because this is still having some glitches and this is still having some limitations. There's no deep learning capability and those things. But like for prototyping purposes or something like that, automated ML can be used pretty easily. And the next thing is designer. This is the evolution of Azure ML Studio, that all drag and drop thing. So in this thing, if you have used ML Studio previously, it is pretty similar, but one difference is you can configure what kind of computing resource that you need to use. That means you can use like GPU computing or the CPU computing or anything on top of this designer and just drag and drop and do the thing there. Yep, the data sets. Like this is one of the main things that I love with Azure Machine Learning, the new studio. Everything is managed under particular categories. So in machine learning and data science, everything is based on data. So you need to manage your data sets. So in here, they have a separate portal to manage your data sets. They have their sample datasets as well. But if I say like you have a CSV file and you want to register that thing and use that thing in your machine learning experiment, so this is the place to go forward. This is datasets is the place where you manage and just take a look what sort of data that you have there. There are two main formats, which is our file datasets and the tabular datasets. Our file datasets is more like the files as the name implies, where you have the images or sound files or the videos kind of things. But tabular is mostly in tabular formats. Might be a SQL database or table, might be a CSV file. Experiments is the place where you manage all your experiments. Not going to talk a lot on that thing because of that, like I'll show you in a demo what sort of things that you can do there. And the next thing is the pipelines. This is pretty cool because you might have some kind of a knowledge about Azure pipelines, where you can have a set of building blocks of running and executing particular programs. So this is somewhat similar for that. We'll say you want to fetch the data and then do the data cleansing and then do the data modeling and then productionalize in 4 different Python scripts. You can automate this process in various conditions and in a way that you like using Azure machine learning pipelines. So that is this helps like collaborative work environments and reusing the code and many things you can do there with pipelines. All right. So that the next thing is models. As I said previously, this is the place where you can register the models and use the models as you wish in your production environment. You can version your models. No need of worrying about which framework that you are using and those things. This is pretty a cool method to manage your models. And the final part is endpoints, where you talking about which endpoint you going for the production and in which environment this endpoint has been hosted on. Is it a ACI, that means Azure Azure Container Instance, or whether that is a AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. So you can configure all those endpoint related things in this endpoint section. All right. in the manage part, we have the compute, data stores, and data labeling. Data labeling is a pretty new one. So when it goes to the compute, as I said previously, there are like 4 types of compute environments that we can use on Azure. The first thing is notebook VMs, where we have all the Jupyter notebooks. And the next thing is training clusters. We can do our model training in a cluster kind of environment. The cluster can consist of nodes, which is having computing like nodes with CPUs or the GPUs, or might be FPGAs. And the next thing is the inference clusters. So when we put a machine learning model into a production environment, we have to bother about, all right, how many requests that we're going to get within these time. We'll say you have a model that predicts customer behavior for a particular e-commerce site. Consider a fact where the traffic that coming for that e-commerce site will go high in the Christmas time. So you might need to increase the computation ability or the inference power in your inference endpoint. So inference clusters can be configured according to those requirements. And the next thing is attach compute. You can attach an Azure Databricks environment or the data lake analytics, or where you have your big data on HD inside. Those things can be attached for this. And I would like to mention, we'll say you have an environment where you have a cluster or a good machine with a GPU that you need to attach for Azure. So that thing can be done here in the attached compute, like a VM, like a virtual machine, but that need to run Ubuntu, or like Linux Ubuntu should be there on the OS. That is the only limitation that they have. Right, I have a question here asking the main language used on Microsoft Azure is Python. Mostly yes, because I'm working with Python mostly, and we have a pretty good Azure SDK and an Azure Machine Learning SDK that is written on Python. So you can use Python without any kind of hassle on Azure Machine Learning. But I know people, and there are some people who's doing experiments on R2, basically on Azure Machine Learning Services. That is also working pretty well. But like mostly Python would be the main language used in Azure Machine Learning, because I don't need to there's no difference in typical machine learning and Azure Machine Learning. The only difference is you have your own tool sets that you use on machine learning environments, and what in Azure is mostly is it is giving the computing and all those managing environment on the cloud. So that is the main difference. This is basically doing machine learning with your own tool set on the cloud. Right, data stores, not going to talk a lot. This is kind of like a storage abstraction over the Azure storages. As I said previously, this is more like a managed machine learning service on a cloud. So you might have your data sets stored in your local machine, but when it goes to cloud-based computing, you have to put all your data onto the cloud, or a partial data onto the cloud. In those cases, Azure is providing blob storages, Azure SQL databases, HD Insight clusters, and those things to store your data. So after storing your data on your Azure tenant, you have to have an abstraction to call those data into your Azure machine learning space. So data stores is the place where you manage all those things. Right. The final thing, the data labeling. This is a pretty new feature that came recently with Azure Machine Learning, mostly for image classification in multi-labeling or the multi-class classification, as well as for object identification or the bounding box detection. This is if you're familiar with image computer vision in with deep learning and those stuff, you might remember a data set called COCO dataset. So this object identification or the bounding box annotations are happening based on the COCO dataset format, which is widely used in the computer vision space. So the main advantage is data labeling is you don't need to build a separate application to give you for your colleagues to label the data. Azure is providing that space, and it is a pretty cool environment that you can just click and do all the data labeling. Right. That is all the things that I want to discuss about what you can do on Azure, Azure machine learning, and I'm going to pop up a screen about what is there in machine learning. And before moving for that demo, I'm going to wait a little to see whether we have any questions. Do we have any questions?
Nothing yet right now.
All right. Okay. My workspace is loading, and I'm going to share my screen there. Yep. Can you guys see the screen now?
Yeah, we can.
All right. As I said previously, so this is the Azure Machine Learning Studio, the new ml.azure.com thing. All right. In this case, these are all the things that I have been discussing. This is the automated ML where you can do automated runs. If like you can see, if you go for automated ML, this is an experiment I ran for just classifying some simple stuff. In this case, they have done like all the modeling outputs, and everything is logged inside here that you can use there. Designer, you might like many people might like interest in this one because this is a pretty easy environment, because this is the same drag and drop environment that we have used before in normal ML Studio thing. So the same environment, you can just drag and drop the things, and finally it is going to be an endpoint. As I said previously, datasets is the place where you manage all datasets. So I have 3 datasets here. 2 datasets are like this dataset is a tabular dataset, but this is a file dataset that has been a set of images. I have been registered as a file dataset. And this one is a tabular data set. That means it is having a CSV file inside there. And if all right, okay. I'm going to show you one of the most coolest features here. So the compute environments. As I said previously, you have the compute instances in 4 different categories. So one is for the compute clusters, and the other one is the compute instances. And you have the inference instances or the inference clusters, which you can attach like AKS, like for large scale inferencing. If you're doing simple like inferencing for test or development, I'm not suggesting you to go for AKS. Just go for a Azure Kubernetes, Azure Container Instance, which is pretty cheap as well as good for your purpose. So in compute instances, you can just go for like you have to select what kind of processing unit that you're going to use in here. As you can see, you can go for the CPU computing, or else you can go for the GPU computing. We'll say you're doing a deep learning experiment and you need to train a set of images. Definitely you have to go for a GPU. After going for the GPU, what you have to do is you have to just select what kind of GPU you're going to get here. So starting from NVIDIA Tesla K80, it goes for like V100s, and all those things are there that you can use on the cloud. And data labeling. This is the environment I said where you can label your data. So this experiment, what I did was I was just labeling a set of images that has been uploaded. We'll see. Yeah, what actually happening here is I can like just say, okay, this part is the flower. It's kind of like mentioning the bounding box, right? It is not an aeroplane, it's a flower. After that, you can just submit the thing. So this is pretty easy. Can do the labeling. All right. So I have another question here. What are the real world use cases that uses Microsoft Azure? Uh, yeah, you name it. In many places, Microsoft Azure is using there, and I can name few of the things like in Sri Lanka also there are many companies using Microsoft Azure, but I guess this question is more regarding machine learning, right? Places where that Azure machine learning is using. Yes, there are many places where Azure machine learning has been using. Cognitive services, and the other one is they have a separate model written on Python, and everything is managed on Azure machine learning. The Python script is managed on Azure machine learning, and it has been opened as a REST API through machine learning services. That is one of the real world examples I can give for you, and there are many other places where Azure machine learning has been used and been using. All right. Any other questions that you have there?
That's it for now. There's nothing else.
Okay. Yeah. So since I have talked for like 42 minutes, so I'm gonna end the session because I didn't go bit long into the areas where like how these services are working, and it should be more technical and it should be more hands-on rather than going for this kind of a lightning talk. But I'm pretty happy to help you out in building your or migrating your machine learning workloads into Azure, because that is a pretty cool platform to play around with and to do experiments with. And the most fascinating thing is what you can do is you can use your own tools and the things that you have used on your machine learning experiments inside this, and no need to worry about like platform dependencies and all. So I'll give you one of the examples that are familiar with me, because for my all machine learning experiments, I'm using a Linux machine with an NVIDIA GPU, and the main IDE I use is VS Code with Python, and I use PyTorch mostly for the deep learning applications. So all that development environment is working perfectly with Azure. So I have migrated like experiments from a Linux machine to Azure without any hassle. It's pretty easy. No need to worry about platform dependencies and those things. Everything is working fine. Yep, that is the main advantage of using machine learning service on Azure and using your own tool sets and the data on Azure. So don't think that Azure machine learning is just that drag and drop interface. It's a totally wrong idea. So it's like a whole kind of ecosystem which is having a set of tools and services as we have discussed, which can do anything that you can do on a machine learning environment. And hope you guys have got an idea on machine learning on Azure and how you can transit your or do the transitioning of your experiments onto Azure. This like I'm not going to explain a lot on like how machine learning works and those things, because we had like pretty much numerous sessions on those areas. If you have any problem regarding these things, because we didn't got like many questions today, we'll move forward and uh, pretty much welcome just to ping me on any social media channel. Like you can find my social media channels through this website, haritha.me. You can just ping me and happy to help you guys out in any case. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you on Microsoft Student Champs, though I'm not in the country at the moment. Thank you, guys.
Haritha, we have another question.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm going for that. All right. Can you suggest some project use cases can do as undergraduate student? All right. This question I get a lot. I I can definitely direct you for like particular use cases or particular project ideas, but there are many cool stuff that that you can do with machine learning. Don't just I have seen in many cases people are just thinking about image classification or doing some disaster prediction kind of things using machine learning, because those are the most common things, or else you do some customer analytics or something using machine learning. I have seen many image classification projects going on. Don't limit yourself for those things, because there are pretty new areas coming in, so think of those ideas. So I can't give a like straightforward answer saying like some project use cases. If you have any project which is using machine learning, Azure machine learning can be attached for that, right? So you name it, anything that works with machine learning works on Azure. So if you're asking about use cases that we can use Azure on your project, yeah, for any project, Azure has a solution there. I bet Azure has a solution there. So up like in the like for the person who put the question here, if you have a project idea and you need to like just polish up that thing and to get kind of like a deep knowledge on how we can use these technologies and what kind of technologies are there to leverage in our project, yeah, I'm happy to help, but I'm not going to give you like a complete new project idea. Like, yeah, that's not going to work, but I'm going to help you out to develop and give you an idea on what kind of tools and technologies or the frameworks that you can use there. Hope I have answered the question. Any more questions?
I just want to add something to that, Haritha. So would you suggest someone getting into machine learning with Azure to first get into the machine learning part and then integrate Azure later?
Definitely.
Or, yeah. Yeah. Or just go at it together.
It's quite like the thing is this: if you want to do machine learning, so you have to obviously start from like machine learning basics and those things, theories and those things. And integrating Azure into your machine learning experiments is pretty easy. It is having a very less learning curve, like a very small learning curve. If you are good in machine learning, you are like I would say within like couple of weeks, you will be good to go with Azure machine learning. But if you're good with Azure, that doesn't mean that you are good in machine learning or Azure machine learning. So the start point would be learning machine learning or getting an idea on machine learning, and do your experiments on machine learning. And just Azure machine learning is just another tool that you can use to do your experiments. So the start point would be starting from the basics of data science and machine learning.
Okay, great. That's it.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. So feel free to ping me and give your feedbacks. I love your feedbacks, as well as if any problem, just ping me. I'll try my best to answer your questions on machine learning, computer vision, deep learning, and those stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Haritha, for sharing your knowledge and spending this time with us. I think the community learned a lot from you today. And I hope we have a lot of first and second years also from various universities, and they'll look into studying machine learning now. And next, we have Renu Harshatha, a third-year cybersecurity undergraduate, joining us from SLIIT to give a talk on introduction to threat modeling. Renu, the screen is yours.
So give me a moment, I'll quickly share my desktop.
Yeah, sure. And if any of the participants have any questions, like feel free to ask them in the chat. If you don't want your name to be there, you can mark it as anonymous and send the question. So there's no stupid questions here. Every questions we'll try to answer because we all here are to learn and to share something. So if there are any questions regarding the talk, please feel free to ask them here.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Good evening, and I'm here to talk about introduction to threat modeling. So this is quite. I think this will be a quite new topic for you all, thinking what is threat modeling and all, because in almost in every organization, they think about developing a product or developing a software, but they don't focus on the security side. So I'm here to show you all and to teach you all and educate you all on how you can focus in your security side while developing your product or any system for your organization. So before we start, so I'm going to tell you all the contents, what I'm going to focus on. So I'll be focusing on what is threat modeling and then the phases of threat modeling. And I'll be giving a small demonstration on a threat modeling tool using a framework called Microsoft framework called SLIIT. So first of all, I would like to give an introduction about me. I am Renu Harshatha. Like Jonathan said, I'm a third-year cybersecurity student, as well as I'm a junior security consultant at Meta Defense Labs. I'm also volunteering at CCSA Executive, where it's a global platform community where we wanted to educate women and men and create them in empowering us also to create cyber resilient leaders. And I'm a proud committee member of cybersecurity community of SLIIT. And I recently started my journey in MS Club of SLIIT. And I'm also a little bit interested in digital forensics. So that's all who I am. So let's dive into the content. Before that, I need few things that my participants should do. So I'm going to give you some sort of conditions. I urge you all that you all follow these conditions because I'm not a person who is going to talk about blabbering about stuff because I need interaction. So what I need you to do is I want everyone to go to Kahoot website because there is a quiz coming up with fun activities. So I want everyone to open up Kahoot and wait till I give you a pin where we can start it and interact with me, ask questions, please, because without asking questions, you won't be able to understand what I'm going to teach you. It doesn't mean only for this, for all the other sessions. Ask questions or else you won't be able to understand what we are telling you all about. And then let's have fun. Well, on a quick note, I suck at creating presentations. So all these slides over here, it's just to pick up points for me. So don't judge me on my presentation making skills. Okay. So before we dive into the section, there is certain terms I want you all to focus on. One is vulnerability. Vulnerability is basically the weakness in the system. And then we have threats. Threats is anything that can exploit the vulnerability, and risk. The third term is risk, which is the potential damage that or any destruction that can be caused to the system by the exploiting of threat using the vulnerability. I hope that is clear. So focus on these three terms because these three terms will be repeatedly coming while I'm talking. So don't get confused with these terms. So what is threat modeling? in simple terms, if I want to say what is threat modeling is, it's an effective technique which is going to help you to secure your system. So when I say system, it is going to be your application, it can be your application or a network or an organization or any physical system. Okay. In detail, if I want to explain what threat modeling is, it is a technique which is used by anyone who knows how their system works and who has the knowledge of basic information security. So if you know the basics of information security and how your system works, then you all can use this threat modeling. So if you all don't have any knowledge, it's okay. I'm going to start from the scratch, so you will have a basic idea about how you can use threat modeling. Okay. There are 5 main questions, the WH questions, which you all should be asking yourself when you start doing your threat modeling. So one will be what? What are we going to do using this threat modeling? We are going to focus on potential threats that can be accessed or that are available in your system. Second is where and how. So how are we going to use it is basically using DFDs. DFDs, data flow diagrams. It's a simple diagram. You don't have to get confused or wonder what is it. No. Don't ever get confused on this. It's basically a graphical diagram which is easy for you all to show it to the third party who you're going to talk to have a conversation. So imagine if I'm presenting all threat modeling. Imagine I'm having a Word document written all what is threat modeling, what are the phases with 38 pages. Will you get interested in getting into this threat modeling or to read it? No. That's why we come up with presentation with diagrams and all. It is easy to capture. Same way, we have DFDs, that is data flow diagrams. We'll be using this data flow diagram to understand how your system works and to identify the potential threats that can be there in your system. Next, who can use this threat model? I have already told. If you all have any basic knowledge about how your system works and a basic knowledge about information security, you can go hit on the threat modeling. And then why are we using threat modeling is basically you have your customers, okay, and you have your organization. If you don't do your threat modeling properly, and if your system is prone to any malicious attack, or if a malicious attacker can come into your organization or into your system and they can see what your system has, they can go through your data and everything. It is not, your organization eventually becomes an unreputed organization. So why we are doing this threat modeling is basically to place your customer and your organization in a good manner. We don't want to place them into any risk and put your organization and customers down. That's why we are doing this threat modeling. And when are we going to do this threat modeling is whenever you come up with new system. You are designing a new system for your organization. Yes, go for threat modeling, do a good analysis on how to do the data flow diagrams and everything. Then you'll be using the threat modeling. The second instance is if you're adding up or you're updating the existing models or the system, you'll be using the threat model. For example, let's assume your company did not have a policy. Okay, so if you are newly introducing a policy to your company, then you can put the threat model under saying where you are going to implement this policy. So those are the 5 WH questions you have to ask yourself when you are doing the threat modeling. Not only this, there are if you come under the framework, it's full of questions. If you don't ask questions, the threat model will be a critical place which will be prone to malicious activities, and also it will prone to cyber attacks, which is currently, if you all know, and if you all seeing news and everything, you'll be coming across so many cyber crimes and cyber attacks in Sri Lanka as well, not only around the world, but in Sri Lanka it is slightly coming up and up and up. So whenever you are going to create the model or a system, make sure you have a threat model. Okay, do your threat modeling first and then go into your codings and everything. So when we consider about the threat modeling, there are 4 phases. The first one is design phase, where the very critical and very important phase where you consider all your requirements to create the data flow diagrams. You should not leave, even if it's a small system, don't leave it. Take it under consideration, because what if that small system or small space is prone to an attack? You will never know it, right? So second phase, once you have covered up all your requirements, what your system or organization needs, you will be applying a framework. So this framework is where you will find the potential threats which is applicable for your system. So once you find your potential threats, you don't ignore it. Okay, you don't ignore it. What you do is you select an approach, and you will implement security controls for it. Even if you get sick, you don't just stay there, right? You will go to a doctor, you get medication, same like that. If your system is prone to any potential threats, you don't leave it just at it is. You just you select an approach, and then you also select a security control for it. Then once all these phases are done, you should verify. Remember the first phase where you considered all your requirements. So you take all those requirements and you verify whether all the requirements have been done correctly. And if you find any potential threats, whether all those potential threats you have taken in consideration and implemented the security control. So this phase, all four phase, is not like a waterfall model where you go one after the other. It's a cyclic process. Soon after your verification, you have to always make sure that this system is protected, and the system is strong, that it doesn't allow a malicious attacker to come inside and do all these notorious things. So now I'm going a bit in detail, but I'll be quick. So we are going to focus on design. Like I said, it's the data flow diagram. I'm going to give a small introduction about what is data flow diagram and a few elements which we'll be using it later part in the presentation. So design is the first phase. So these are the elements in the data flow diagram. You have the process, you have external entity, trust boundaries, data stores, and data flow. So these are the main 5 elements which we'll be using when we create the data flow. So data flow diagram is to show the overview of your system. For example, you see over here the picture. It's an enterprise network which uses a cloud service, and how they call a request for a data and how the response is given to them. So user device, if you see the user device, I'm not sure whether you can see my cursor, but if you can, that's good. If you see the user device, this is the external entity. With the data flow, we are saying that it is requesting to the protected service. Over here, the red dotted line is the trusted boundary. It can be square or it can be line, but it should be in dotted lines. And then this is an overall view. So take a close look. This is an overall view of how the data flow diagrams is done. It is not simple. Like level 0 is simple. There are 4 levels in data flow diagrams. So this is the level 0, which is the overall view, like an eagle eye view, what the data diagram is. But you have to choose the right data flow diagram depth layer. You don't get confused. This is not something related, like it is not an rocket science. It is really simple. Depth layer is basically a magnifying tool. Okay. So why I'm saying it as a magnifying tool is, you see, I'm taking this critical system. It is a system application which is used for medical purposes. So there you have a web application, which is, I think this is for, it is for hospital purpose, where the patient and doctor pediatrics can request and respond for services. They have a database over there. Okay, and they have web application in the middle. So we don't know what is happening inside. Okay, so in order to, for a normal person, like a low-level person, to understand this diagram, you explain it to them, yes. But if you are talking or communicating with a techie person, you all should anyway deep dive into it. Even if it's you have to understand it. You have to understand the system like from the scratch. It's just like humans. So see, if we like someone, okay, we go we don't just judge them by their looks and everything, right? We understand them, then we know what they have gone through or everything. Same thing with the system. You can't just say, you can't just have an overview and have your assumptions. Okay, you have to deep dive into it and check how the web application is working, what are they using, where are they storing what are they storing inside the database, are they encrypted or is it stored in a plain text? That should be done in the data flow diagram. So those are the levels. So like I said, level 0 is what I showed. So level 1 is going in deep, where if you have sensitive data information, you have to do level 1. You can't just say no and skip it. You have to do level 1. And if it's a critical system, make sure you also go into level 2 and level 3, because you have to explain all the details, every single minute details and each and every data flow. So that's all about the design. Now let's quickly jump into the break phase, where we will be using a framework for this data flow diagram, and we are going to find some potential security issues. So I'm going to I'll be teaching you all 6 main categories where it can, there may be lots of under that, there are a lot of attacks happening, attacks and threats out there. I'll be focusing on main 6. So when it comes to framework, there is something called Linden and then attack trees. But in this session, I'm going to cover something called SLIIT, which is it is a framework given by Microsoft. So SLIIT is basically, there are 6 words in it. So each stands for one attack, okay, one potential threat. S stands for spoofing. Then we have tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and E for elevation of privilege. I know it sounds like big terms, but I'm going to make it really simple, where you can quickly grab on everything and you will understand. It's going to be really fun. Don't worry, I'm not going to be jabbering all over the session. So let's move on to spoofing. What is spoofing is pretending to be someone else. I'm not sure whether you all have done it. If during your O-levels or A-level period, you all would have gone prank call someone telling you all someone else. Or when you were a kid, you might not have done your homework, or your marks might be low, so you are scared to go and ask your parent for a signature. So what you will do is you sign as your parent and you go submit a report card. So that is exactly what's happening in the system. So someone else might act as that they are legitimate user for that particular system, and they come steal all your data, information, and go. So what can you do to prevent this spoofing is you implement authentication. So authentication is basically message authentication code. Like y'all are using, I'm hoping y'all be using Microsoft or any email services where you have a authentication code. It will send it to you either through your mail or to your phone. They will send it a code to authenticate that it is you, verify that it is you who is logging into the system or logging into your mail. So that is spoofing. Second, it's tampering. Tampering is basically modifying data. So what a life example would be, you got 38 marks for your maths exam, and your mama is gonna, your mama is gonna whack you and kick you. So what you do is either you ask your friend, or you take a pen, or the monitors, whoever is the head lead of your class, you make that 38 into 88 by writing inverse 3. So it becomes 88. So there you go. You have scored a good marks. Your mama won't scold you. You are good at maths. So you modify data. Or if the exam paper is there, the teacher has corrected, maybe let's assume MCQ, you will just cut off the second answer and you underline the right answer and you say, Miss, I wrote it correctly, but you have marked it wrong. So those are tampering. You modify the data. You modify, delete it, or you change the data. So that is called tampering. That happens in the systems too, where you find people might change their medical record. If it's a medical system, if an attacker is inside, they might change the data of the patient. So how to prevent is you have to implement integrity. So in order to implement integrity, you can have digital signatures. You can have something called access control list. So that's what I have mentioned as ACL. And you can also have message authentication. So to make sure that only people who have given access can modify the data, not everyone else. So that is tampering. The third one is repudiation. So telling no and not taking responsibility. We still do that. Telling no, if for example, if it's a baby, they steal chocolates, they eat, and they say, if the mama comes or dada comes and asks, did you eat the chocolate? They say, no, I didn't eat the chocolate. And still we don't take responsibility. We do something really wrong and we know it that it's wrong, but we are scared to take the responsibility. Okay, we'll say, no, that wasn't me, that was someone else who might have done it, it's not me. So same thing, if with or without your knowledge in your organization, if an employee does something wrong, they will be telling, no, I didn't do it, I didn't delete that record, that wasn't me. How can we prevent it? Is by implementing non-repudiation. You have a strong authentication code in place, and you make sure that there is a secure logging and monitoring. So you can trace back who did that transaction. Okay, so if someone have deleted a record or deleted the system or a database, you can track back saying by logging. If you have the logging information, you can track back it, trace back, and you can see, okay, Mr. X is the one who deleted this database. So if you don't have the facility to do it, you can always have a trusted third parties where they provide logging and monitoring services. Next, it is information disclosure. Is seeing information which you are not allowed to see. You might have a diary or a gallery where you have archive list in your phone. You don't want anyone else to see it. You only have it by yourself, right? What if someone sees? What can you do? So that is, we have to anyway prevent it, because you can't let a third party or an anonymous person looking or stalking into your information. That is not good, because it's your private, personal, confidential data. So in order to prevent it, you implement the confidentiality where you can have access control list and also encryption. But if the database, why encryption is, what if the database contains password and your usernames? If it's stored in plain text, if I'm the anonymous person, I can steal your password, your username, log into your system and do everything and blame you. According to the monitoring and logging system, it will be going as you are the person who did everything. So in order to avoid that, you have to always encrypt your passwords or any valuable data in your database. Next is denial of services that is not available at the moment. Imagine you are given lots of tasks to do it. Will your brain handle it? You won't be available for your family. You won't be available for your friends. You have to finish the task off. This happens to web services, especially for websites where they send lots of packets requests to the same website, which is called the DOS attack. It is really famous. So y'all can always go and search about it. So to prevent DOS attack is you have to make the website available. How? By filtering. You can filter the packets which should come in and which should not come into their website, and also make your website in a scalability mode. That is basically it's an elastic resource where you can increase the width size of availability of your web, like the packets coming in. You can increase the web length or you can reduce it. So that is denial of services. And elevation of privilege, having permission that you should not have. A small example would be parental lock. So this is something personally which happened to me, where I opened a Facebook account when I was in grade 6. So that is not allowed. I know I'm really naughty. So my brother had parental control having in the computer system, but he didn't know that you can unlock those parental control if you log into an incognito mode. In incognito mode, the parental control doesn't work. So what I do is I open incognito mode web page, and then I talk with my friends using Facebook. So that is elevation of privilege. Although my brother had a parental lock, I elevated my privilege and I acted as that I'm authorized person who can use Facebook. Okay, it happens in normal applications too, so you have to anyway prevent it. So you can have access controls and permissions set. So you can say who can access all this information. A low-level management person can't access an internal record of the higher level management. Okay, so you give permissions. Only the high level management can access this, not the low level management. So you have access control list based on groups, based on their roles. So that is the framework. So now you know the framework. This is what we have to do. But what you have to actually do in the framework is you should ask questions stating whether is this okay, is this system prone to elevation of privilege? If so, what I have to do? You have the security control listed. You have to implement those security controls. So that's it about the phase. Second phase, where you have to create, select your framework and find the potential security threat. Now that you have figured out your potential threats, what you have to do is you have to figure the right combination of security control and implement them. So we are going to select an approach. There are three main approaches. One will be the system focused approach, where you will be focusing on the system and you will be only focusing on the logical and the physical system. So you will look at each processes only focused on the system and you will protect that system. Second one is attacker focused approach, where you think like an attacker. What will the attacker do if he comes to this endpoint? Will he do an SQL injection? Is the input validation applied or implemented in that particular entry point? If not, implement it. So you will be thinking like an attacker. You will be focusing on all your critical assets, not the basic one. You will focus on your critical asset where your crown jewel is. You will focus on it and you will protect those critical assets. Next is the asset focused approach, where you will be evaluating all your asset. You won't think about the system. You won't think about the critical asset. It's just overall every assets which is there in the system. You will focus on it and you will take that approach. So choosing this approach is up to y'all, to your team. Y'all can sit as a team, y'all can talk, decide which approach you are going to choose for the system which you are developing or creating a product. Which approach are you going to choose is up to y'all. There is nothing called this is the best system, that is the best system approach. It's the teamwork. If you don't talk, or if your team members are not okay with your decisions, then threat modeling is going to be really complicated. You won't be able to finish it off. So make sure that each and every member of your team accepts what you have discussed so far, and then you take an approach and you implement the threat model. Am I going so fast? Do we have any questions?
No, Renu, none so far.
Okay, so I assume that everyone understand what I'm talking. Okay, because there is a quiz coming up and you are supposed to answer it. And if the highest person, if we meet in future, I'm pretty sure I can get you all a meal. Okay, we can have a meal. So make sure you all are listening about everything what I'm saying. So verifying is where you are going to verify all your issues which you have figured it out, and your security controls you have implemented. The major problem in verifying is they don't know how to prioritize their issue. They take their critical issue as the severity of the critical issue as a normal, it's not a critical, it is just an important issue. So you have to know how we are going to prioritize all these issues in your system. So Microsoft, this is color code which Microsoft uses. So it's up to you. Y'all can, your team can decide which color should be critical, which color should be important or moderate. That's up to y'all. Y'all can have either 5 categories or 3 categories. Y'all can come up to that discussion and y'all can come up to a decision based on that. So this is what the Microsoft uses as their color coding for the severity of their issues. This is how they prioritize it. And then they have some security controls. So when it comes to security controls, you can divide them into 3 main categories, which is one is physical, second one is technical, and third one is the administrative. So physical control is basically locks, surveillance, physical repair, hot sites, and fences. So these will be your physical control mechanisms, and technical, it's going to be your honeypots, system patches, firewalls, and everything falls under technical. And data classification, policies, audit logs, disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan will be focusing on the administrative. So they will decide on particular policies and rules and regulations where you can you have to follow them. You can't say no to it, you have to follow them. So that's all about the theory part. I'll be moving into a tool called Microsoft Threat Modeling tool. This is the tool where they have automatically implemented threat modeling. So when you do your data flow diagram, the system itself, it will say, okay, there is an issue over here, you have to implement a security control over there. There is another tool called VCU, but that is not automated. You have to manually, you have to check everything, whether the entry point is secure or not. That is quite a bit risky, because if you don't consider one entry point, and if that is prone to an breach or data attack, then your entire system is gone. So I prefer Microsoft Threat Modeling tool is a best way to choose. I'll do a small demo on it. So over here is the sample tool I have created for you all. So on your left hand side, you will have stencils. Stencils is basically the elements of the data flow diagram. This is the canvas where you are going to create your data flow diagram. I just tried external entity, and I connected to a web server, and I gave a small boundary. So you can have all your, for example,
Renu,
yeah,
we can see your presentation screen only.
All right, I'm sorry. Is it click? Can you all see now?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay.
Now we can.
Okay, now this is your canvas over here. And on your left hand side, you have stencils. Stencils is basically the elements. Remember the 5 elements I showed before? So those are the elements. So I'll minimize it so you can see everything. These are the elements we have. So we'll be using these elements to create your data flow diagram. So I have created a small diagram over here. So it is a user who is trying to connect into a web server. So you create a trust boundary over here, because it is an external. When it comes to internet, you don't trust. Okay, so you have to have a trust boundary that the internet is secured and you can use that site. So you create a trust boundary, and I created one HTTP and one HTTPS to show you all that you all can put both. But when it comes to HTTP, on your element properties, you can see over here, it shows that the source authenticated. No, it's not authenticated. Whether the destination is authenticated? No. Whether it provides confidentiality? No. So you should not use HTTP. So you use HTTPS, where it says, yes, everything is authenticated. I'll show you a simple full diagram. So that is a sample threat model which was created. So over here, it is a generic data flow between operating process where you are going to store data and how the external interactor is going to gain those data. Okay, you can always, in the view settings, this is your design template. So you can only see the design templates. You might ask a question which I was expecting no one asked. You can ask the question, okay, how this is going to help you to analyze the threats. So over here, you have a small icon. You can either click this icon, or you can go to your view diagram and go to analysis view. So when it comes to analysis view, over here you have all the threat list, your title and your category, where it says information disclosure, tampering, spoofing, all the threat is given over here. So you can select Either you can, if that threat is not important or mandatory, or is it okay to have it, you can always delete that thread, or you can change it. You can change it by going to the category. This is filtering option. So before, wait. Okay, I think it's getting stuck. It's okay. Let me say you. So when you click it, you will have a small table called what is that indicates is where you can, whether this spoofing or the tampering category is necessary to have, or is it the severity. You will check your severity. Is it high, low, or moderate? If it's critical, then you have to anyway put a security control. What is that security control? And you will have a progress. So this state over here, it says not started. So once you have started, it states, okay, it's on progress, or whether it is mitigated, so and so forth. So this is how you use the Microsoft threat modeling tool. Under reports, you can go to under reports and you can create a full report, and you will have all the details about your data flow diagram. So it's time to have fun. So that's all about Microsoft threat modeling tool. Jonathan?
Yeah, we can't see your.
Exactly. My screen
Kind of.
is getting stuck. Okay, so what I can do is.
So meanwhile, if there are any questions, please ask them in the Q&A tab.
Yeah, apparently my screen has been, I don't know, it's not working. Okay.
Okay, Renu, I just have one question, like regarding your talk. Like, since some of our participants are undergraduates, maybe first, second, and third year, how can they start? Like, is it a good idea for them to use this in their maybe projects they get in their university, like their website or any mobile application or any software they want to develop? Is it a good idea for them to use this in the university itself when they have a group project?
Yes, they can always go for it. It's a good way to start, because yeah, that's a good question. You all have to start it beforehand, not after you have implemented everything. You have to start it from the data flow diagram, so that you know where you have to implement your security controls. Because what so far I have seen is students, they create the project, and the end of the day, I mean when they go to submission, there is a model for them called web security. That's when they realize, okay, we have to do all this, and they start from the beginning. They start to do their project again, which is time consumption. So it is a good idea to start with data flow diagrams. Start with it as a team. Y'all start with it and do. Apparently my screen is stuck, and there is no way.
Yeah, okay, we have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The question is, can threat modeling be applied to any domain? I think they may, by domain they mean maybe software engineering, networking, machine learning, and AI. So
Yes.
can threat modeling be applied to any domain?
So that's what I asked you all to listen. When I mentioned the word system is basically you can apply this threat modeling to any system. What I mean by system is your application, your networks, or even for machine learning, you all can use it, because you should have an idea to, you should understand first before you create something. If you don't know how your system is not going to work, and if you are not going to secure your system, how can you have a value for your product? So yes, you can use it for all the domains.
And yeah, okay, yeah. And we have another question. What's the name of the tool? Can you
It's
tell us the name of the tool?
threat modeling tool.
Microsoft threat modeling.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's all we have. There's no more question.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I have no option to rejoin either. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave it right here. And I'm sorry that we couldn't play a game. I put my effort for y'all to create that game, and it is a fun game. Maybe if we get another chance, or maybe at the end of the session, like once after the speaker has spoken, maybe we all can play that game if you all still wanted to play the game. So yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for Microsoft SLIIT organizing this thing. And this is my first speech, by the way, so I hope I gave a good introduction about what threat modeling is, and I hope I made you all understand everything. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renu. Yeah, we are sorry that your screen is not working, but we will see if you have enough time. We can play the game at the end of the session. Okay, so next we have Dinuwan Kalubowila, one of our very own Microsoft Learn student ambassador and a third-year software engineering undergraduate from SLIIT, and he's here to demonstrate in building REST APIs using ASP.NET Core. So Dinuwan, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, and good evening all. Let me share my screen. Can you see this my screen?
Yes, Dinuwan, we can.
Yeah. Actually, this is about myself apart from MLSA. So without talking any detail, since I don't have any time to explain step by step, so I'm directly move on to the topic. So what is actually ASP.NET Core is? ASP.NET Core is platform developed by Microsoft. Microsoft, they initially released this framework in 2016, but before coming my ASP.NET Core framework, they introduced .NET Full framework. So then .NET framework is only support for the Windows platform. Then not rather than any other Mac OS, Linux or anything. Just only support for the Windows platform. So by avoiding that problem, they introduced in 2016 .NET Core platform. The .NET Core platform come across so many cross-platform development. So when taking ASP.NET Core, is simply ASP.NET. ASP means asynchronous server pages. It's the ASP.NET Core built on top of .NET Core. Then this is the ASP.NET Core is the version of web development. So even though there are so many .NET Core development in Visual Studio or Microsoft side, there are Windows Home application, then WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation. Those are extremely and desktop application. Then we talking about when we take mobile application development, Xamarin is on top of .NET. Then completely ASP.NET Core is built upon for the web development. So therefore, there are so many cool features. Then this framework is open source actually. Then it's supported, as I said before, it's supported for the cross-platform development. And also there is a ecosystem development by Microsoft using Microsoft Azure. Then you can develop ASP.NET Core application and deploy it easily to your any cloud platforms, either Azure or GCP or AWS. So then another thing is there is in ASP.NET Core framework, there is having inbuilt dependency injection feature. What is actually dependency injection? Dependency injection means when developing a program, developer no need to worry about creating instances in particular classes. So what actually framework does care about that. Then what actually developer have to do in order to invoke those created objects, developer should have to write a particular statement, particular logic. Then framework by itself it created those objects and invoke to the program. So that's why simply dependency injection means. Then another thing is middleware pipeline. Actually, what is called middleware pipeline? Then let me share an example here. Yeah, this is an article that I wrote several months ago. It's actually based on JavaScript, but there is a very common idea, actually, request response pipeline. This image. Can you see that or no?
Yes, we can, Dinuwan. It's clear.
Yeah. This image showing actually is request then response. Request is generated by a particular client, then response is go to the server. Then this is the flow that actual request is following. Then this is the starting point. Then it goes to the middleware one. In the middleware one, it contains a set of conditions like if particular user is authenticated, if authorized for this route, like that. So these conditions are satisfied, then only it passes to the second middleware. Then as same, second middleware has a set of conditions and third middleware and so on. Then taking response back, that's the same procedure. That's why we call, actually it's a middleware pipeline. So there is a very lightweight middleware pipeline enabled in ASP.NET Core. Then we can host those ASP.NET Core applications using sort of servers like Crystal, IIS Express, then Nginx, Apache, Docker Engines, and everything. So by default, ASP.NET Core, when we develop a ASP.NET Core application in localhost, in our local computer, we have to run in localhost first. Then by default, they are opening IIS server. So these some theoretical parts. Apart from going theoretical parts, I should have to go some practical things. So yeah, I show you. Yeah, this is the architecture. Actually, it's a client-server architecture. When you're taking an API and a client, it's completely based on outer architecture is based on completely client-server architecture. Let's take example as the platform we are meeting today, MSChamps. It's completely based on outer architecture. Outer architecture is client-server. Why? In Microsoft Teams also have 3 clients like mobile application, then web, then desktop. Each application connected to one server. That server means it's it might be API or MVC controller, any kind of application. So just only having one server. So desktop and mobile and web is other clients. So this is also this is the same thing here. When we developing application, if outer architecture is client server, then it may have so many complex architectures in modern days, like microservices. Even Facebook also has microservice architecture. Then event-driven architecture, component-based architecture, subs and parts, like that. There are so many inner architectures. But when we take any kind of application, either WhatsApp, Facebook, or Slack, then Teams also, there is having client server architecture. So let's take an abstract view of that. This is the part that in my session I am going to cover. This is the development part in the server side. This is the backend API. So backend API is connecting to the mobile platform. This is, you can develop any front end using React cross-platform development programming language or native development programming language. Then this is the web client, web desktop client. So this is the part that we have to develop in quality, like a, there is estimate called, that's a matrix called quality assurance in software engineering. Then we have to build up those products according to a particular quality. Therefore, inside of this such kind of backend API, we have to follow certain architectures, standard architecture. So there is involving so many design patterns here. Actually, design patterns is the most important factor in object-oriented programming. Not only object-oriented programming, there are when developing UIs, then any of the JavaScript platforms, because JavaScript not actually completely object-oriented. When taking design patterns, it's the most important factor when developing a code. When developing a business application. So therefore, we have to follow this architecture when building such kind of API. So there was not having enough time. At the beginning, I actually planned to do a hands-on session, but therefore that's why I created this template also. But I'm not having enough time for that. So I'll explain. I'm also having a developed application. I also into the GitHub, so I can share this link also. So I can show you what actually does. And as first step, when creating any kind of application, you have to create a module class. This is the thing here. You have to create a module class. Then you should this is the module class here. Then you should go around with your business logic, because actually when we take in MVC architecture in modern days, your business logic inside the controller. So you have to use business logic here. Then you can see here there is a interface. Using interface, you can hide implementation of the methods. So actually, one thing I had to forget at the beginning, .NET is a language independent. I think you may not familiar with actually what is language independent, but Java, because I take this example as Java because a lot of Sri Lankan developers love to Java because their native language platform is Java in Sri Lanka. So in Java, it's a platform independent. Why? We can run any kind of JVM on even Mac OS, then Windows, Linux, anything. But .NET before coming .NET Core, then .NET in support only for Windows. But .NET is .NET is language independent. We can develop .NET applications using C#, then F#. F# is already founded by Microsoft. Then Visual Basic, like that. .NET is a common framework. Then we can invoke any kind of language here. So I'll back here again. And this is the interface, and this interface I am implement here and here also. Then this is also the data business logic part. Inside of that, I am invoke here entity framework. What actually entity framework? Entity framework means this is actually entity framework. Entity framework means the type of it's an example of object relational mapping. What actually object relational mapping? Yeah, simply it acts as an adapter between code block and your database. So while adding certain typically you are creating a table using in SQL. If it's SQL, you are creating create table statement. Rather than going on that, you can directly create tables using such kind of ORMs. How? There is if you take entity framework code, there is two kind of approach: code first approach and database first approach. In code first approach, you have to develop your you have to code your database inside of your developing file. Like in here, as an example, C#. In C#, we have to create what are the attributes that the table has. Column names, actually simply column names. Then what is the table name? Like that. According to after we creating those things inside of our C# file in code first approach, we can invoke entity framework core and directly create database, directly get a table inside of this database. Then the vice versa of that, after you creating database table inside of the database, then your code is back. That's the vice versa. As an example, you may familiar with, I think, if you're familiar with JavaScript ES6 development and with MongoDB, there is same kind of object relational mapping called Mongoose. But remember, those kind of object relational mapping ORMs just limited only for the particular language and particular database engine. Because you cannot invoke entity framework or MongoDB and JavaScript Express.js EX6. Just it's only accessible for the C# and relational database. So there are some other examples. Hibernate also there. You can develop Java applications using Hibernate framework to MySQL, like that. Dapper is also there. Then Django is also there. It's for Python Flask APIs. So I will move back to my code base. Yes. In your family, as you're familiar with JavaScript, I think NPM or Yarn is Yarn package manager, Node package manager, and Yarn. as same as here, .NET also having such kind of package manager, which is called NuGet Package Manager. Here you can see actually what is NuGet Package Manager is. This is NuGet Package Manager. There are some NuGet packages that I have installed here. You can see the NuGet packages that I want to configure entity framework code. These are three NuGet packages that I want to configure entity framework. So what actually entity framework code .SQL server means, you can attach entity framework code into Microsoft SQL Server, then MySQL Server, PostgreSQL Server, and SQLite. Just only what you have to do after decoupling, after creating decoupled application, just you can invoke any kind of database using this object relational mapping, because it is totally independent from your application's business logic and any other endpoint. So here you can see here you can see I am getting those get employees. This means its context means I'm created database object, database reference. According to the database reference, I access the employees table. Let me show you it. And this is, I think this is my DB. This is my DB, MSChamps September. Then yeah, this is the fields. Actually, this is the table name where I put it. I'll show you. This is actually table name. Then these are table columns. This is the beauty of actually entity framework code. Just see what I have to do here. Then show you. This is .NET command line. .NET, let me type .NET ES here. You can show if you install your entity framework code globally after typing command .NET EF, you can see the entry points of entity framework code. Then there is initial migration I will add here. I can delete it. So to do it. Because before you are creating this adding migrations, you have to connect your database. That's after creating database in a SQL server, then within application you have to connect your database using IDE or any other links. That I will show you my database connection string. Yeah, this is my database connection string. So I think this was set up. Yeah, we cannot actually delete this one because it's already applied for the database. If we want to delete this one, we might have to delete also this database, because if I can show that one, but it's consuming a lot of time. But I'll show you. You can remove current embedded migrations using this command. So after adding your connection string to your project, then what you have to do here, simple command .NET EF and migrations, add initial migrations and some other name. It's your choice, your migration name. After getting enter this command, there is a folder appearing here in your solution explorer called migration. Inside of that folder, it contains actually what is the column values, then what is the integrity constraint, like this is the primary key here. In is identity. I'll show you it in here. And then design of this database. You can see here identity. Identity is yes. That means it's a primary key. Then identity increment by 1. Then where it started from 1, because if you can start it from 100, then you increment 1 by 1. Then 100, 101, 102 like that. Then here we will take we took the seed as 1, then 1, 2, 3 like that. It's the same thing on here. Because the identity, it means primary key. This is the primary key here. Then 1, 2 like that. Then 1 is the initial count. Then sequence increment is 1 like that. Because these are the required fields. Because max length is how this max length is 100. I'll show you here. I define those things here because these things are required max length and key. Those things are called data annotation. So this is the library file here. After invoking this library file, you can then I remove that file. Then it's containing error message. Just alt enter. Then you can add the same annotation like that. So that's the database connecting part. So another important part is you can see here. Our application endpoint, our client is accessing only for the employee control. That means it's containing the HTTP put methods, HTTP gets, then post and delete and fetch. These are the entry point of any kind of API, either JavaScript, Python, Flask, .NET, anything. Either Spring Boot also the same. This is the entry point of application. This is predefined class given by C# program and startup here. Then client is only accessing here. But the client cannot access any more. Then, when creating, when employee controller dealing with DB model, just dealing, because employee controller is also having the data which are existing in the system. But just think, if this controller is dealing with this DB model, it is good. It's a best practice. So, sorry, we have to, in order to do full decoupled system, in order to develop full decoupled system, we have to create things in standard order. Therefore, we have to map those things. Because after getting those details into DB model, and DB model map to the DTO class, we call it data transfer object. So on top of data transfer object, it transfers to the either HTTP request or HTTP response. So for that part, there is a separate dependency called I'll show you here. A separate dependency called AutoMapper dependency injection. That's one. This is also available in Lookup Package Manager. Then actually, what what AutoMapper does, it just mapping those DB models into a DTO class, data transfer object. You can add any number of databases, any number of tables, just changing this name here. Just changing this name, these employees, then you can add any more tables. So it doesn't matter. So that's actually what AutoMapper does. And then I'll show you another one. Yeah. This employee, then we cover this DTO class, then REST repository class, then employee DB context and DB model. Then we look at on employees controller. Move on to the controller side. This is employees controller. Then you can see here these are the endpoints like HTTP routes. This is controller name, which means employees. Then API controller. Then it's invoking the HTTP GET method. Like in simply JavaScript, you may code like this and show you JavaScript use like that. These not abstract use. You define the entry point here. Entry point means there's not entry point. Endpoint here. So this is the same thing applied in ASP.NET Core in this particular aspect. So this accepting the regular ID. According to the ID, it's returning the employee's data. Then that data is not going to directly map to the DB model. Those data map to the read DTO object. You can see here also. Read DTO object. This is returning. This method is returning the array is high enumerable list of employees. But this is returning just only one literal object of employee contain relevant to specific ID. So it's the mapping part is done here. So how you teach your application to map those things? That's another important part. We have to do here this profile section. That means create map. Create map means we have to create. This is invoking actually post request. So when we sending data JSON object to our API, it directly take to the employee model. Then after taking the employee model, when we input data to our API, our database, we should return back as same as much as possible. That's the best practice. Therefore, how it returns according to the instruction given by employee read DTO. This is also the create even though they are the same method but different parameter structure. So simply method overloading here. This is the thing happening. So this is all about object mapping and data mapping. So I will go through it quickly. Program and startup class here, and after that I will show you a demonstration about all operations and startup class. Program class. Actually, program class is the main. It contains the main method of the application. So you can see public static void main. Actually what is called why main method is called public, then static, then void. Why? There's a simple reason. Your main method is executed by compiler. Then compiler should have to know. The compiler have a public access to any kind of your class. That means we have to give its abstraction property as public. Then we have to create static. The reason the compiler have a opportunity to access your class without creating any instances. It directly call your class. Then void means it's not returning anything. That's actually that is the way actually you have to learn those kind of things. So inside of that main method, you have to create. That is called create host builder method. By itself, it's built automatically and run. After creating this IIX Express button, it automatically build and run. But you can run your application just in Visual Studio's perspective. You can run your application just pressing Control and F5. But before that, you have to build Control Shift B. That's a shortcut. So inside of this create host builder method, there is a static. There's a type of iHost builder interface. Inside of that, you can see the implementation. There is lambda functions here, which we call in this kind of approach. We call in C# there are lambda functions. In JavaScript, we call those things are actually arrow functions. So using these kind of lambda functions and arrow functions, you can speed up your code. Then it increase the quality. Actually, what it does, it take up function as a parameter of your another function. That's actually what arrow function does. And inside of another arrow function here, inside of that, web builder start the default class, start the startup class. Like here, you can add any other class that you want. Here, in the boilerplate they mention startup CS is the initial startup class. So inside of that startup class, you can see here the constructor. So this part. This is actually how dependency injection is invoked. So you can see here I connect my database here and configure my controllers, which means my entry points like get API, post API, put and patch, delete like that. This means the automapper. It's automapper taking the mapping objects like app domain means it get the current internal domain, then it maps to the current domain and get assembly line. Like that. So in services means that means when we creating at the beginning I told you developer no need to create instances. Using this dependency injection, add scope, you can also add singleton here. Add scope means you can add so many, you can create so many instances using particular class. But add singleton here, singleton is also there. Yeah, at singleton here, you can only create just only one object. So if you're familiar with design patterns, you may know that. So I will use what is S, and then this is actually this is a fine example for dependency injection, because these are also dependency injection, but since you are not familiar with ASP.NET Core, you might get in trouble to understand those things. Then this is most familiar one. Then this simply what it means, just take a reference of iEmployee repo and create a reference type of this object type of SQL employee repo. So what means that SQL employee repo containing SQL employee repo implements this iEmployee repo's interface. So that's the part for the dependency injection. Then this is the middleware function. These are the one middleware, two middleware, three, like that. This one middleware, second middleware, and third. This is how the request is passing. And just one, this is last thing I think, and you can see here why we are not go through repository here. In addition to go directly to the employee data DB context class, why we should go here using repository? So I'll give the answer. So you can see here I comment something, because before creating this app, stepwise I try to have some mock data. These are some mock data here. Yeah, you can see here, these are the mock data. Then after testing the mock data, I get a confirmation that it's working, it's not a problem. Then if there is a malfunction happen, this definitely on the database connectivity. Therefore, I'll comment it, and I go to the SQL employee. This means it's taking the data from the database actually. That's the thing why we use repository. Actually, repository patterns is also there. Design patterns, repository patterns in design patterns also the same meaning. So basically, repository means we have to use such kind of scenario. We can test our application with running correctly or not, because if there is a malfunction in database, then after hosting those applications into your cloud servers, then there are so many malfunctions. Your subscription may be over, then your app service, then your database may be interrupt, then your application is not working. Probably database may interrupt. If database will interrupt, then your application is not working. So such kind of scenario, you can use this mock data. Just what you have to do, just only change this dependency name. So I will show one demo here. I build that, just be succeeded. Then Control F5. No need to do that again, because I am also running that application. So this is my Postman client. Yeah, this is the GET request. ID 1 and 2. Okay, 1. Then this is returning data according to particular ID. Then I test it. I'll do quick test here. Should I contain is okay, correct, and so okay, correct. Here, what I have to do is this here. I just change my salary. Then let's see what happens. This is updating part, okay? Yeah. as soon as I submit it, I return this one. How these things happen is actually the those automapper concept, because it's after sending data model, after sending model classes as parameter, then using automapper functionality, it's returning DTA objects. They are so no more involving DB database context class. So something I have to forget, actually those DTO classes containing the same data. Yeah, no need to have any validations here because this only reading, but here you have to add some validations, because without, if you didn't add validations here, then if you do something wrong in your just imagine you are not input your last name field in your Postman, then there is a SQL error, SQL exception. You can avoid that using such kind of data annotation as same as in your employee create DTO class. Then it's simply turning a HTTP bad request, 400 data code. So in read DTO class, I am taking ID here, but in create DTO class, I am not taking ID anymore, because there is no important, because ID is auto incremented. It's important to the DB context class, because that's why the DB is creating according to the DB model, DB context. But in create DTO, we don't need that. That's why I'm not including here. Then I add another post method. Only any parameters. Say Gihan, then Saranga. Add it. Yeah. As soon as you add the new record, you can appear here. So, like that's the reason actually why I include the create DTO class, and I explain it delete also. Yeah, my record is deleted. The deleted record is going appears this like this. And there is no more any other record after deleting. So that's up to my part. That's all for my part. So Jonathan, it's up to you. Is there any questions?
There are no questions, Dinuwan, but I just have one question. Like you told, we like Sri Lankan developers are more inclined towards Java.
Yeah.
So, like, could you explain like what is the advantage of using maybe .NET and ASP.NET? Like, is there something? Is it something we should look into?
Yeah, actually, .NET Core environment is completely on top of very friendly for design patterns. You can invoke any kind of design patterns easily, because there is having inbuilt package managers. Yeah, like Automapper I said before. And another thing is we can there are very strong ecosystem built Microsoft Azure. Then you can easily deploy your applications to your app services like that, because even if you are those when developing those kind of applications, Microsoft provides you to several IDs like Microsoft Visual Studio, then Visual Studio Code. You can directly publish those your applications into your cloud service and get on live server. That's the main point, the main things that I have understood. Another thing is dependency injection also.
Okay, Dinuwan. I think like we can have more sessions to teach everyone about ASP.NET.
Definitely, we cannot describe the core platforms, core architectures of Microsoft ASP.NET Core just having 30 or 20 minutes. Definitely, at least we have to discuss those things nearly 3 hours. And that's why I am got quick recap those things, because initially I am planning to do a complete session, but since I was not having any time, I have to go very fast forward.
Okay, are there any questions from our participants? I don't see any questions.
I think maybe we can go with the Renu's game. I think we have like a couple of minutes to do that.
Yeah, I'll check.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm here.
Yeah, could we play a game? We have a couple of
Yes,
minutes left.
yes. Yeah, sure. So let me present it again. Okay, y'all can see it, right? Jonathan?
Yeah, we can. Now we can.
Okay, so I want you all to not log in, visit to kahoot.it. I think Jonathan has shared the link in the Q&A session, and enter this password, and let me see what's happening, whether people are joining or they're just there.
I joined it.
Yeah, only 2 players? Seriously?
Like maybe if someone is watching from this in the laptop, maybe you can use your mobile phone to log in here.
Yeah. How many participants are there, Jonathan?
We have quite a few. I think they might join soon. Let's wait a while and check. Huh?
Yeah. So whoever is gonna win this game, it might be a tie or might not be, but whoever is gonna win this game, make sure if you meet me in future, let me know your identity, so I can maybe take you for a meal or get you something.
Yeah, and Renu, I can sponsor for some stickers and some swags. If
That's cool. That's cool, Gihane. Thank you. So there you go.
So if anyone wants to win some stickers, this is your chance. You don't even have to talk, ask any questions. Just interact with the computer.
Yeah, interact with computer, and I hope you listen to me what I have told everything. So
I think we can continue, Ravi. You have 9 players, I think.
yeah, okay. So let's see. Okay. That's your question. You all have 30 seconds. So quickly answer. Which describes potential security against spoofing? Okay. Next question. Okay, Dinuka is on top. Let's see. It's a true or false. Authentication is the security control for denial of service. Now the 2 more people have to answer. Cool. Let's see. Okay, Dinuka is still on top. Which approach do product engineer focuses the most?
Maybe you can minimize the team window. So the part of the answer is like.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Nice. Question number 4. Which approach do penetration tester focuses the most? Good one, Dinuka. Okay, the last quiz. It's double points. Which field is Renu interested in? Wow. Okay, people were actually listening. That's nice. Well done, Indi. Who is Indi? Harindu. Congratulations. And Gitana is.
Yeah, actually, I
You can't win your own stickers.
sorry. So we need to have the fourth place. So the Tarandu is in second place. The first place. India is in the second place, and we have to find the third place. Sorry.
I think we can. It was okay. I didn't see. Maybe okay. Let me check. I'll check it and I'll let you all know who is in the third place.
All right. So India and Tarandu, please contact us. So we'll be try our best to provide you with some tags and stickers. Yeah.
Yeah. So y'all can always go to Microsoft Learn and learn about it. If y'all want in detail explanation about the data flow diagrams and about the model, whatever I gave was just a overview of it. I didn't go in detail. So if you want to try the models or you want to try the tool, you can always go visit Microsoft Learn and you can do your research over there. And I hope there is no any other questions, or either you can choose to have questions or you can go on with several minutes of uncomfortable silence. That's up to you all. And this is the end of the session. So thanks everyone. Whoever is interested in reading blogs and all, I used to write blogs for SLIIT CS Squared. It's a medium, so you can go and check on there. And I write articles in LinkedIn and connect me through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. There you go. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for this.
So I just said something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ajit?
Yeah, Dinuwan.
Yeah, Sajid, I add my repository here. So can we publish that question? I cannot see if it is publishing or
Yeah,
not.
it's there. Yeah, Dinuwan has published a repository with all the code what he explained. It's there, Dinuwan. You can see it.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
So please check it out if you want to learn more about ASP.NET and how to do the CRUD function with ASP.NET. It is there under the published questions we have, and he has given his GitHub repository.
If there is anyone interested in ASP.NET Core, like deep dive into ASP.NEt Core, there is separate video tutorial from Mr. Pitti Ismail, is one of the senior MVP in Sri Lanka in developer technology. So you can follow his channel, Ask Victory. Actually, I learned a lot of things from his channel also. So you can, if you want something deep dive from beginner level.
Okay, thank you, Dinuwan. To wrap things up, I invite Gihan Sirivardhana a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador from SLIIT, to take control of the screen.
Yeah, so thank you, Sajid. So hello all, hope you all had a wonderful session. First, I would like to thank Mr. Haritha Thilakarathne for spending a valuable time to teach us about these amazing technologies. Then I would like to thank Renu and Dinuwan for educating and motivating others with your passion towards technology. So at last but not the least, I would like to thank you all on behalf of all the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors for attending the sessions and joining with us to enhance the knowledge among Sri Lankan youth. Finally, I hope to see you all again in our next meetup. Until then, goodbye and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Gihanaye. And if you want to, we'll be having monthly meetups like this. If you want to keep attending that, follow our Facebook page and we'll update everyone here. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.